Okay guys, check this out. Our goal today was to deliver a complete HTML page through our Flask application. You can see our old output in the small window there and our new output in the larger window. And you can see we have a header and we have a title for our application as well as some hover over capability on our table. And that's because we delivered a full HTML page to the browser, including some links to Bootstrap, which are going to set us up for our future episodes. I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we go back to our Flask playlist, and we're going to be taking a look at how to deploy a complete HTML page to the browser in our simple web application. Now, as you guys know, Flask is a very powerful and lightweight way of delivering web applications to your users using Python, and that makes it really awesome. But one of the first things that we need to do is we need to deliver a complete HTML page, and in the process we're also going to be referencing Bootstrap so that we can have a little bit of styling in our application. Let's get to it. Interested in more cool topics like these? Make sure to check out my Patreon. The link is in the description. Okay guys, so this is a really cool one today. Today we are aiming for completeness in our output. You can see what we had in our myapp.py on our little Python application. We were just outputting the HTML table plus some other text, but we were not actually outputting a full HTML page, which is what the browser expects. And so that's kind of our next task, and that's what we're doing today. And so we're going to get our Flask environment started again. You might remember, if you have not seen the previous episode, make sure you go back to the introductory episode where we set up our Flask application. We're going to start that. We're going to activate our environment, and then we are going to go ahead and start our Flask application. Now, of course, we're entering our commands in our command prompt in Windows. And if you don't remember how to do that, make sure to go back to the previous episode. And we're going to start our application. We do that Flask app myapp run command there, and you can tell when it started by, you can see that the address is displayed here where you can find the app running. It tells you that you can quit using Control-C, and it also gives you a warning. So let's put that address into our browser. And this is what we programmed last time. Now, this is an actual HTML table that we took from pandas. We took the pandas output and we just output it to our browser directly, along with a little bit of text there that you saw at the top. But that doesn't really make an HTML page, and browsers won't really like that output, and it's not really complete in any way in terms of an output that you would expect from a web page or a web application. And so we're sort of going beyond the hello world stage here, and we are actually going to try to output something that is more browser friendly and is going to set us up for doing some really awesome stuff in the future here. And the first thing I'm doing here is I'm just changing that HTML. You can see that we created a bolded sort of sentence there, and I've changed that to say our cities list because that is closer to what we're actually doing. We're no longer saying we're alive. And so we've got our HTML, but our HTML is just a bold statement with a table output that comes from that BC cities data frame that was in pandas there. And so we want to make this look a little bit nicer, and so we can certainly do that. But as I mentioned before, our quest today is to become legitimate. We want to have a actually legit HTML document coming out of our system, and so we're going to do that, and we're going to basically put together some HTML using a string here. So I'm putting the HTML equals bracket and then string there. If you're not familiar with Python, this is where we can build a string on multiple lines. And so you can see I put the doc type tag at the very top. That's for our browser to be able to see what kind of document it is. And then we're going to put in our HTML tag at the start of our document, and then we're going to put it in at the end of the document. Now you can see that I'm working with strings within strings here, and so I'm going to use a little technique that I picked up off of Snowflake, where we can use the backticks for our strings, and then we're going to convert those to the double quotes after we're done building our string, our complete HTML document. And that's sort of a kludgy way of putting our HTML document together. And for your very basic applications, this will actually be enough to get the job done. If you just have a few pages with a few parameters and things that you want to put into them, which we'll discover in later episodes how to do variables and things. But if you have a very basic application, this is enough to do it. We are going to be taking a look at the templates which are used in Flask, and that's where you can really build sort of a very rich interface, and you can remove all of the HTML part of your coding out of the Python window and into actual HTML pages, and then they have some interactivity with Flask in order to have the dynamic processing and things like that. So make sure to stay tuned for future episodes where we are going to be doing templates. Now moving on, what we're going to do is we're going to add our meta tag and our head tags so that we have some information about the page that we're delivering to the browser. It doesn't have to be super sophisticated. In this case, I'm going to add the viewport, which is sort of like how everything is sized when it's opened according to what device is being used. And we're going to add a tag for a Bootstrap link, which is going to give us all kinds of neat little widgets and things and styling and things that we can call on. And so we're going to add a tag for that as well. So you can see here I'm building this string with the backticks that you can see there. For example, around viewport and around the width equals device width. And as I mentioned before, those will be converted to double quotes just before we deliver HTML back to the browser. And that allows us to do our string building here in Python. And you'll also notice that I'm using the /n at the beginning of each of my lines here. And what that is that's a new line. And so that's going to deliver it nicely to the browser. You don't have to use those, but then if you look at the source in your browser, you'll see that the HTML comes out and it's all jumbled together and it doesn't really look that nice. We want to deliver a nice document to the browser that is somewhat structured so that it's readable by humans and much easier to debug if you make a mistake in it. Okay, so the next thing here is I've pasted in the link to Bootstrap so that we'll have all of that CSS available to us. That's the cascading style sheets that we don't have to build ourselves, at least for now. I've pasted this in. This is from the Get Bootstrap website. Make sure you check that out. And I'm just converting all of these into backticks for now so that we'll have this in our web page when the page is delivered to the browser. And that'll give us our cascading style sheets that we need for design. And there's going to be a second link that I'll paste closer to the bottom of our document that's going to have a little bit of JavaScript in it that allows us to access some of the functions that are built into Bootstrap. So there we go. We've got our link for our CSS style from Bootstrap there, and that's using JS Deliver, and that's our Bootstrap 5.3.2, which is, at least right now, it's the latest one. So this could be an app that has all of the latest goodies from Bootstrap that you can use, all kinds of widgets and button styles and all kinds of layout designs and things like that. And so there we go. We've got our head. That is the start and end tags for our head. So the head is now completed, and make sure to note that is also where we put our title there, our Flask application in the title tags inside of the head, and that makes it a complete sort of head of our document, and we are good to go. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the rest of our stuff inside of the body of the page, And once we have our body being built here, we can start to use things like the header. So H2 there, I'm using H2. Now you could use that before as well. It would use the default browser one or whatever is there. But you will notice a slight difference in style. Now that we're linked to our style sheets, the H2 will have its own characteristics, as well as, H1 will be the big header, or H3. You can look those up on getbootstrap.com. Make sure you go through and look at all of the components and things, because there's lots of neat little style things in there that can really make your page look awesome. But today we are just delivering a complete page, so we're going to close that body tag. Note that I'm adding these tags after we've added our table and stuff to our page and done our processing, and we'll follow that closing body tag with the closing body tag for HTML, which is the end of the document. And so you can see we have our complete start of our document here with our our head and our our HTML tag, our head and our body tags all starting. We've got our title inside of our head tags there, and then we've got our end tags for the body and end tags for HTML, and those are going to sort of close and button everything up, and that's the end of the HTML document. So we're going to do some building today. We're outputting the same table. We're going to add some style to it, but everything else goes between all of that stuff, the tags in the beginning and the tags at the end. And so that's sort of what building an HTML document is like. You can actually write this into a notepad and then open it with your browser, but using Flask we can build an application which will have all kinds of dynamic stuff in it. And so this is the second link that we're going to paste in. Now we're not really going to use any of this today, but we're setting ourselves up for future. This is the JavaScript file that is going to be sort of associated with Bootstrap, and it's going to allow us to do things like have dismissible alerts and things like that. And so if we use the CSS class, for example, for dismissible alert, which is the little colored notification bar that you can sometimes see on a web page that gives you a message back, and it has a little X in it on the right hand side. Those things need a little bit of JavaScript, and so that's what the JavaScript here is going to do that we're getting from jsdeliver.net there. And so that's going to give us all that nice little functionality. We're just going to put it in just before the end of our body tag there. You can see it says script and then the source. And then just before we return the HTML to the browser, we're going to replace those backticks with double quotes. And that allowed us to do all of our string building without too much complexity. And then right at the end, we just replace our backticks with double quotes, and it's going to give us a page. So let's see if we didn't break anything here. So we're going to open our browser, and we can hit refresh to see if we got our application running here. And I just realized that I did not restart the application, so let's minimize that. Oh, I did get an error. Looks like I got an error anyway. So it didn't like me, and that was because of, it looks like, I didn't close some line tags. So I broke it already, look at that. So let's go take a look at the string building here that we've been doing, and it looks like I got my closing tags on each line, but I missed it on head and I missed it on the body. Those would be important. So let's save that, and then we'll hit our Flask app run again, and you'll see the application come up again with the option to quit with a Control-C there. And now we can hit refresh and see if we got it. So that's how you can debug things as things go. You'll get the errors in the console window, and you can go through the error. Now you can see the list looks quite a bit different already, and also the H2 that we put in definitely changed design there, the font and everything, and we have the title of our application in the browser tab, which is what we want. And you can see that design has changed. Even though we didn't apply design, And that's because of a lot of things. One is that we made a full HTML document. The other one is that we've referenced some style sheets. And so we've got some style sheets referenced in our HTML page. And so that's going to change how the output looks. Now I'm going to do a Control-C there, and I've stopped my application. Now I can make some changes and see if I can't make something look a little bit nicer here. And so the first thing that I'll do is I'm going to go up to this table here. So we got a data frame, a pandas data frame, and we're going to apply some of that CSS styling to the data frame. Now you can do a little bit of styling just using the pandas library, but we're going to leave that out for now. And all we're going to do is we're going to say, our classes equals the table class in Bootstrap. So this will be the first thing that we're going to reference with Bootstrap here, and we're going to say our classes equal table hover, and that's a class in Bootstrap. You can look it up in the Bootstrap documentation at get Bootstrap, and so I'll go ahead and start the application again. So I use that up arrow to get the last command where it said app run, and then I hit enter, and that started my Flask application. And then now I can refresh my browser and I can see what we're going to get here. It's going to look a little bit different, but you're going to get the idea of how big of a change Bootstrap can make. So all I did was I added one class, and that looks pretty cool. So now it's got hover over capability, and you can scroll through it here, and that's pretty neat. You can see that the font has changed. Now we can add the actual titles, I believe, by just using a list as one of the arguments in our toHTML function, and that'll sort of change the look and feel. But I'll minimize my browser for now, and we have completed our quest for today, which was to deliver a complete HTML document to the browser. You can see our application is still running on localhost or 127.0.0.1, which is your own computer. And we could go ahead and do those headers like we said. Maybe we'll do that in another episode. But for today, the main gist of it was to be able to get to having a complete document, and that's what we've done. Now, you might think about, what does this look like, in terms of the output? And so if you do a Control-U, it depends on the browser. Now I'm using Chrome here, but if you use Control-U, it will give you the actual HTML that was output to the browser for any particular page that you're looking at. And so there's our tags, and you can see that this is not terrible. It is indented, so it's fairly readable. There's our Bootstrap reference. Our opening and closing head tag is there. We've got our body opening tag, and you can see that in between that is this sort of big table here, and we've got our table. Now that table tag was not did not have a new line in front of it, so we'll go fix that in a minute. But you can see the table that was output. Now it is not indented the way that we would like it to be. I'd like to be that shifted over a little bit. But that's sort of the output from the data frame in Pandas, which we used the toHTML for. And there's our closing tags for body and HTML. So this browser is nice and happy with this document. It has all the tags that we needed, the very basic tags for a document, and that is fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see there. Now note that the browser doesn't really care about the /n new lines that we created. It only makes a new line if you use the BR tag or if it's in styling. So we could actually do this whole thing without putting the /n's in there that you see. I'm going to put one in right after the H2 tag there. Now that won't make a new line in the output that people see, but it will make a new output in the sort of HTML that's delivered to the browser, so that if you need to troubleshoot it, or if somebody else needs to troubleshoot it, or if people actually look at the source of your web page, it looks a little bit nicer. So we can hit Control U again, and we can go back to our page and look at the output, and you can see there's our H2, and there is actually a new line in front of the table tag, and that is exactly what we want to see, so that it kind of makes sense when we scroll through it. There are our closing tags, and we have created a complete HTML document and deployed it in our Flask application. Want to buy me a coffee? Check out the Super Thanks, the button is right below.